The Solitaire Series, Episode 4, The Queen of Diamonds, by Troy Lambert. Narrated by Troy Lambert. So, King is dead? Her high heels clicked on the hardwood floor as she paced in front of her desk. The tall blonde wore a short black dress that showed off her legs. Her hair was tied up in what once had been a tight bun, clearly unraveling, little strands of hair fleeing their captivity. Large diamond earrings dangled from her ears, at least a carat each. The desk was a Wellston Executive, one of their new line of sit-or-stand models. At the moment it was raised to the standing position, and a piece of large anti-fatigue foam sat on top of a bamboo chair mat. A leather executive chair was pushed back from the desk, and on the back wall a set of shelves contained what looked like a mix of classic literature, law textbooks, and rare collectible editions. What pieces of him we could find indicate yes. A man of slight build and Asian descent stood still in front of her, keeping his distance. He was new to Vegas, but brought a great reputation from Hong Kong. That's 4. Fucking Jack. It seems his injury has actually given him an advantage. That injury should have killed him. Are you a man of mercy, Mr. Nakamura? No, ma'am. Only of honor, she scoffed. Same thing. This business has no place for either. Nakamura said nothing. I think we need someone more ruthless, she said, pacing. Someone who won't respond to his appearance, but someone crafty, too. I thought surely King would see through him. Ma'am, if I may? The small man bowed slightly. Yes? It may be that Jack is no longer on the defensive. He's disappeared, but he has ties to L.A., the house, the beach, the dog, and it's a great travel hub for him to, he hesitated, conduct business. If he disappeared and isn't on the defensive, then where is he? Maybe he knows who sent King. That man talks, or rather, talked, a lot. That he did. Assuming Jack knows who sent him, or has even guessed, he could be coming to find you. Maybe to talk, but... Right. Jack is a smooth talker, but he always ends up killing the conversation. What do you propose? A trap, ma'am. With you as the bait. You're a brilliant man, Nakamura. You may be one of us yet. The Ford Thunderbird was aging, but aging well, largely because of the care offered by her owner. Her paint job, refreshed only once since the original, was dark blue, but this time with metal flakes throughout that shimmered in the sun. Her vinyl top, a dark tan, was soft, supple, and free of cracks despite her dry California home. The interior of the car was perfect, original to her 1976 origins. Even though the stereo had been upgraded, the face still looked like the stock Ford model. She was beautiful. Classic car aficionados adored her. When he drove her to car shows, people always encouraged Jack to enter, but he never did. This car was his baby. Boris sat in the back seat. He loved both Dobermans and German Shepherds, but he liked the short-haired breed better. They were better suited for desert climates. And then his gorgeous car wasn't full of dog hair. At that moment, Boris had on his support animal vest, the one that allowed him access to places where dogs were not normally allowed. Unlike dogs who were a part of the new trend where everybody declared their pet an emotional support animal and certified them through some online service, Boris had real training. But Boris served 2 roles. Emotional support, yes. Jack's entire right side bore scars from what many called a horrible accident. He knew it for what it had been, an assassination attempt. His right eye was gone, his face on that side a drooping mess. His right arm bore scars, and while not entirely useless, posed a significant handicap. Add that to his right leg and foot, nearly unrecognizable as human. That made things like standing and walking extremely painful. His high tolerance for opioids and his desire to never be a slave to any one thing, let alone a chemical substance, meant Jack was in pain much of the time. The Thunderbird had one special modification. A gas pedal for his left foot made it possible for him to drive. Luckily, he had enough vision in his left eye to not be declared legally blind, so he kept his license. But he never drove at night, and he had horrid depth perception. At the moment, he wore dark sunglasses, ones with a strap that compensated for his damaged right ear. A hat covered his half-scarred and bald head and sat low over the sunglasses. His suit was tailored as perfectly as it could be to cover his flawed body, and he wore a black driving glove over his mangled right hand. Jack wondered if he were doing the right thing. But there were only two ways to get out of a solitaire contract. One was feet first. The other was to eliminate the originator of the contract. In this case, the Queen of Diamonds. Jack simply hoped she wasn't expecting him. He had managed to disappear after the last man they sent to kill him failed, but only long enough to plan this trip and head straight to Vegas. The Thunderbird rolled up to the front of the casino. Both valet attendants, clad in typical red uniforms, pointed. He witnessed a quick game of rock, paper, scissors, and the winner stepped forward. Jack slid out and stood as quickly as his disability allowed, pulling his cane with him. He tipped the seat forward, and Boris jumped out and then sat by his side. Jack attached a leash to his harness, even though he never needed it. "Careful," he warned the valet. "There's an accelerator on the left. I can't do much with my right foot." The valet leaned in for a closer look. "Cool, sir. I'll be careful." "Thanks," Jack said softly, and held out a 50. "Park it somewhere close. Watch for me, and if you see me coming, go ahead and pull her right up in front and leave her running." "Yes, sir." Jack turned and walked through the gold-framed glass front doors. As soon as he entered, the sound of slot machines and murmuring crowds washed over him. Lights flashed, buzzers buzzed, and shouts of victory made him smile. Straight ahead was a display with a shiny Harley-Davidson sitting on a turnstile, spinning seductively. "Win me," a large sign read. "Not anymore," Jack said. He had thought of buying a trike in order to take up riding again, but he just never got around to it. He wasn't sure how Boris would react to the wind, and he rarely went anywhere without him. The dog sat at his right side when he stopped, protecting him where he was the weakest. Jack looked around. Where would she be? A set of stairs led to the second floor of the building, where there were conference rooms and offices. Guest rooms started on the third floor. Two men stood at the top of the stairs, one on either side. He couldn't see earpieces in their ears, but those things had gotten smaller over the years. As careful as they were both trying to be, he could see a slight bulge under the left arm of each. They were armed, of course. What he needed was a distraction, one that would enable him to get past them, yes, but also one that would keep them occupied for a few moments that he would need to get up the stairs. For that, he had a plan. Jack walked carefully up and down each row of slots. There were a few types who played the machines. There were the serious ones, those really looking to game the system and make a buck or two. They often had an addiction, with some being fresh from Gamblers Anonymous meetings, deviating from one of the 12 steps for just one last shot at the big time. He could spot the frustrated losers, from housewives to husbands, too chicken or too poor to play blackjack or join the poker rooms. What he needed was the drunk, the sloppy gambler. Unless they won big, they rarely knew how they were doing. Cheap booze drove them, but when they did hit, they drew attention. The right mark sat on a stool in front of a machine. Overweight, his cheap sport coat lay in a heap on the floor behind him. He half leaned, half sat on his stool, and he just kept pushing the button for max bet. The credits line showed that he kept losing, but he still had over $1,000 in the machine. A small replica of the Harley from the lobby offered false hope on a cardboard disc spinning lazily in the air conditioning over his head. Sweat stains fled from the armpits of the gambler's white shirt like waves from a cannonball dive. Several glasses, rum and coke judging by the ice mixed with cola remnants in a few of them, lined up next to the machine, red straws protruding from the top. He probably should have been cut off a long time ago. "It's your lucky day," Jack mumbled. He pulled out his phone. Just then a large man appeared at his left elbow. "Nice dog," the voice said. "Can you come with me, please?" Jack kept looking down at least long enough to open the app he was looking for. He tapped the screen twice. "Give me just a moment. I'd be delighted," he told the new arrival. Clearly, he had been spotted. Lowering the phone to his side, he clicked the screen one more time, then took 3 steps forward, just enough distance so he would be beyond the end of the row and the drunk gambler. The drunk had just won $500 and didn't even notice. "Come on," the fat man said to the machine. "Daddy wants to ride. I'm afraid we can't keep Miss—" Jack tapped his phone screen one more time, just as the gambler hit max bet. Time slowed. Jack's one good eye strayed to the screen on the slot machine. One motorcycle dropped into place on the main bet line, followed by a second. The third landed with a loud ping. Jack took 2 more steps and turned. "I won!" The gambler stood up suddenly, knocking his stool backward onto the floor. Boris growled and stepped forward. His would-be security escort stepped back, tripped over the stool, and went down in a heap. Other gamblers rushed to join the celebrating man, shouting their excitement and support. Jack simply walked away, and Boris followed at a heel. The men were gone from the top of the stairs. One, he was convinced, was the man who now struggled to free himself from the celebratory crowd. The other was— where? Boris' snarl revealed his location. The other man came from his right, moving fast. Faster than Jack could possibly move. "Kampf!" he commanded. Boris leapt in front of the coming threat and bared his teeth. He barked once, then a second time. The guard skidded to a stop and reached for his weapon. Around them, people screamed, running from the barking dog and the upcoming confrontation. Behind them, cheers from the celebration mixed with the fear. "Gwr!" The Doberman jumped, knocking the man backwards and grabbing the attacker's forearm with his teeth just as it emerged from his jacket holding a pistol. Fierce growls preceded the drawing of blood, even through his suit coat and a shirt underneath, and the gun fell to the floor with a clatter. Awkwardly leaning on his cane, Jack managed to pick the weapon up. "Fritzen!" Boris released the man, and Jack limped towards the stairs leading to the floor above. He held the gun as best he could with his gloved and ruined right hand, and managed the cane with his left. His strides were fast and jerky. He grimaced with effort. If she didn't know he was coming before, she would now. At the top of the stairs, a small Asian man appeared. "Boris, sick," Jack said through heavy breaths. The dog tore up the stairs 2 at a time like a bullet aimed at a target. The small man held up a hand and said something Jack didn't hear. Boris stopped, went to the top of the stairs, and sat. Jack couldn't hear him over the panicked noise from below, but he could see the dog's mouth moving and his sides heaving. He was whimpering. The man at the top of the stairs made another gesture with one hand stretched out, one that clearly meant stop. Jack turned to see the 2 original guards behind him. One held a bleeding forearm in one hand, face pale and drawn. Behind him was a not insignificant trail of blood. At his feet, a puddle formed. The other man stood next to him. His suit was rumpled, tie loosened, and his mouth was open. Jack heard raspy breathing and saw his chest heaving. Both stood immobile, staring up. Jack turned back and saw the smaller man, who, despite his size, seemed to command the room from his place at the top of the staircase. As their eyes met, he turned his hand from the stop signal and then pointed at Jack. He then flipped his hand, fingers up, and gestured, "Come on." Jack looked down at his leg and the cane, and then at the several steps remaining. He had no choice. He dropped the pistol, moved to the railing on the left side, swung his cane under his right armpit, and began to climb. Below, the crowd calmed. He heard more than saw security guards moving through them, separating groups and encouraging them to move along. Jack looked down, taking the journey 1 step at a time. He heard a thump and assumed the dog bite victim had fallen. He didn't slow to verify his hypothesis. As he climbed, he schemed. 2 ways this could end: feet first or a defeated queen. He wasn't ready to leave feet first. Physically superior, the final guard could defeat him in a fair fight, he was sure. Hell, since he'd been injured, he relied much more on his mind than his body. That, and his dog, who now sat, waiting. Halfway there. 3/4, his right side in agony, his one good eye watering from the pain. Only a few steps left. The Asian man had disappeared. Still, Boris sat, waiting, lunging as if at an invisible leash from time to time, and whimpering, the sound now audible but suppressed. The dog's anxiety was clearly apparent. Once he reached the top, Jack turned to the left, the way his instinct told him to go. Boris followed. The open landing narrowed, leading into a hallway. Jack stopped. Blocking the way, the small man stood, hands clasped in front of him. He stared straight ahead, not even a hint of nervousness in his stature. "Sick," Jack said. Boris sat, looking at the man in front of them, and whined. "Your dog. He will not attack me. We have an understanding." "I see. Perhaps you and I could reach such an understanding." "I know why you are here. You may call me Nakamura." "Okay, Nakamura." Jack executed an awkward, leaning on his cane bow. "What do you want?" "Nothing from you." "Why did you tell me your name?" "There is no honor in killing a man who does not know you." "You aim to kill me?" "Why are you here?" Jack debated only for a moment, but opted for the truth. "There are only 2 ways to leave this situation and be free of Solitaire." Nakamura held up a hand. "I know what you are going to say. So you intend to harm my employer." "It's her or me." "That is true. Perhaps you could help me." "You have nothing I want." "I can see you are not a man who will be bought," Jack stated. "Perhaps there is something else." Nakamura looked long and hard at Boris. "There is nothing." "There must be something." "There must be something." Nakamura moved with lightning speed, and Jack found himself staring at the ceiling. To his right, Boris whined and barked, but didn't move. "What have you done with my dog?" he asked. His back burned with agony, and his right side filled with sharp pain. He still gripped his cane with his left hand, but it was pinned to the carpet by a small foot clad in a gorgeous and well-polished Oxford. "I told you. We have reached an understanding." "Can I see her?" "Who?" "The Queen." "Why?" "I just want to talk." "I do not think she's interested." "Tell her I have the ring." "That means nothing to me." The foot kept him pinned. "Of course it doesn't," Jack said. "Tell her. It's what she really wants. Tell her I'll trade the ring for my life." "And if I don't?" "If you tell her after you kill me that I offered the ring and you said nothing, she'll never forgive you. I think you know what that means." "She did not say a thing about it." "She wouldn't tell you, but she wants it more than she wants me dead. Just go tell her. If she still wants you to kill me once you do, I'll let you. Don't move." The minute his foot released his arm, Jack moved. He swung the cane hard at the side of Nakamura's knee. Nakamura collapsed onto his back in surprise. Jack rolled to his right side, ignoring the renewed pain and the awkward angle of his arm. He struck the fallen man with the cane once, breaking his forearm, and then again striking him in the ribs. He then pressed a button on the head of the walking stick and plunged it into his opponent's groin. Blue sparks jumped, and the man twitched once, twice, and then fell still. As soon as Nakamura lost consciousness, Boris ran forward and stood over him, growling. "Let's go," Jack said, crawling to his feet. He limped painfully down the hall toward an open door and turned to go inside. "Hello, Jack." The blonde stood there, taller than he was in her heels, a gun pointed at his chest. "Let's not play games," she said. "Where's the ring?" "Ah, you heard me." "I know you, Jack. Give it to me, and you live. Don't, and you die." "Then the location of the ring dies with me." "So it does. If you're not going to give it up anyway, what does it matter?" "Okay," he said, stepping forward. "Drop the cane," she said. "But I—" "Drop it. Limp over here." 2 chairs waited, facing one another in front of her massive desk. She moved ahead and took the further one. He followed her order and barely managed to make the closer chair, collapsing into it. You're in pain. Yes, most days. Today more than others. All that physical effort. You must be fairly confident. I have something you want. You killed King. Kind of. He really killed himself trying to kill me. It's not my fault he had a false impression of where the bomb was. I'd love to hear that story sometime, but for now, the ring. Your promise of my safe passage? I promise if you don't tell me, you never leave. And if I do, we'll see if your information checks out. If it does, you get a significant head start. I want to stay in L.A. Not gonna happen, Jack. You live, that's all, and that's the deal. Jack sighed. Okay, I brought it with me. You what? The ring is here. You can have it if I go free. Free to leave, not be in L.A. or Vegas. You never come back. Deal. You stay away from solitaire interests. I'll need a list. Done, she said. The ring. It's in Boris' harness. The dog? Velcro pocket, right side, behind the service animal badge. Will he let me get it? The woman was clearly excited. If I tell him to, he will. Well, do it. Boris, sitzen, falscher Freund. False friend. The dog was trained for those words. He knew what to do. Jack had to trust that he would do it. Boris was his only hope. As the woman knelt, her skirt rode up, revealing the upper part of her milky thighs. Her low-cut dress swung open, nearly revealing her breasts. In another situation, she might even be attractive. Her smile widened as she reached for the pocket. Good dog, she said. Good boy. Boris licked his lips. Jack knew she could feel the outline in the pocket by the way her fingers first stopped moving and then moved more frantically. She gasped. She pulled the ring free and held it high, hoping to study it in the light. Then her face fell when she saw the plain piece of stainless steel. What the hell is this? Jets, he commanded. Boris sprung, his jaws clamping on her throat. Jack saw the vein open, the blood spurting with her heartbeat. Boris released her and sat. She fell back. Her skirt went all the way up then, revealing black panties that matched her dress and a scarred belly. Her hand flew to her throat, and blood continued to pulse between her fingers. Jack staggered back to his cane and grabbed it, then made his way over to stand above the dying woman. She stared at him, and her mouth worked, trying to form words, but she could not speak. He pulled the ring from his pocket, the real one, and slipped it onto the middle finger of his left hand. He held it up for her to see. Her hand moved from her throat, and she reached for it as her life fled her neck to pool on the hardwood floor. It's mine now, he said. He then turned and limped from the room. Nakamura now lay at the beginning of the hallway, trying to crawl forward with one hand and one leg, dragging his broken arm and dislocated knee behind him. His eyes widened as Jack approached. The Queen of Diamonds is dead, Jack told him. Boris walked at his right side down the hallway. At the end it turned sharply. Halfway down the passage was a set of elevators. He rode one to the ground level and walked toward the front door. Boris pranced by his side. No one moved to stop them. As he stepped outside, he pressed the hat lower on his head, adjusted the sunglasses to a better position on the half of his nose that would hold them. His Thunderbird sat, idling, waiting for him. The valet stood beside it, smiling. Jack tilted the driver's seat forward, letting the dog jump into the back seat. He handed the valet another $50 and dropped wearily inside. Shifting the car into drive, he headed to his hotel. He'd spend a single night here and then drive back to L.A. and home. For the first time in a long time, Jack was free. Thanks for listening to the Solitaire series, Episode 4, The Queen of Diamonds. Next in the series, The Five of Hearts.